to someone just because it seems so right for her and will make her happy, and then we do not think of the object again, we will be practicing true giving. Initially, in our practice of giving, we will be happy that we have helped others. In time, we will naturally give without any thoughts of having given, of someone having received, or of something that was given. At that point, we will feel the joy of acting from our true nature, the nature of perfect selflessness. The Buddha told us that in the ultimate state of giving to others, we will not dwell on thoughts of having given, on what was given, or of the recipient. Initially, we give unconditionally with expected returns. Gradually, we learn to give more unconditionally. And ideally, upon giving, we let go physically, mentally, and emotionally. At first, this will be extremely difficult for us to do, but gradually, we will cease to miss what we had given. And then at some point, we will even forget that we had given. In the practice of giving, we need to give what will make the other person happy. To give thoughtlessly is not true giving. For example, it is not thoughtful to give our famous birthday cake to a person who is watching his diet, telling him that he should just enjoy the cake on this special occasion lacks consideration. If just a picture of a birthday cake will make him happy, then we should give him the picture and forget about the cake. The manner in which we give is also very important. We should not give in a way that embarrasses the recipient or increases our sense of importance. It should not matter whether we like or dislike the recipient. We are to give non-judgmentally and without differentiating between those we like and those we do not like. When we say that we will give something, we should do so as soon as possible and not purposely make the other person wait. Also, we should not expect the other person to feel indebted to us. There is no point in holding on to our extra possessions. After all, possessions are ours for only a relatively short time. Give freely now, according to our abilities, and enjoy the goodness and joy that our generosity brings to others. We really need very little for ourselves. Once we have provided for our families and met our responsibilities, we can practice giving to relieve the suffering and unhappiness of others. The second paramita is moral self-discipline, which counters worries and unhappiness and enables us to continue on our way to awakening. In a more literal sense, it means abiding by the precepts, which can refer to the 5 precepts, the bodhisattva or monastic precepts. In a broader sense, the second perfection means ethical behavior, our following the rules and customs of wherever we are. Initially, as we begin our practice of discipline, we can refocus on refraining from harming others. Gradually, we will begin to develop and increase our virtue. The ultimate form of this practice is to benefit others. Properly practicing moral discipline requires us to use good judgment and wisdom to determine what is appropriate or inappropriate. By allowing ourselves to be led by our desires and acting impulsively, we can easily harm others and ourselves. Actions that benefit others now and in the future are appropriate. Actions that bring short-term benefit and which can harm others in the future are inappropriate. Also inappropriate are actions that are done to benefit solely ourselves, especially at the expense of others. To guide us in our cultivation of non-harmful behavior, we can observe the 10 virtuous conducts. These are divided into 3 major categories: physical, verbal, and mental. Physically, we are prohibited from killing, stealing, and engaging in sexual misconduct. These were discussed in the talk last night. Verbally, we are prohibited from lying, from using speech that is harsh, divisive, or enticing. Mentally, we are prohibited from giving rise to thoughts of greed, anger, and ignorance. Lying is deceptive and dishonest. We need to speak only truthful and thoughtful words. The Buddha said, "If you know anything that is hurtful and untrue, do not say it. If you know anything that is hurtful but true, do not say it. If you know anything that is both helpful and true, find the right time." We lie because we are attached to our ideas, possessions, and other people. We modify the truth to protect our self-image. We embroider the truth to make things sound better or worse than they are, perhaps because we want to be praised by others, or because we are afraid of appearing incompetent. We do not value the truth in our speech because we are ignorant and do not yet understand the consequences of our untruthful words. If we wish to practice thoughtful and caring speech, we do not use abusive speech like shouting or bad language. To speak harshly to others can destroy their peace of mind and that of all those around us. We also do not waste our time gossiping about trivial matters. It would be much wiser to use that time to engage in activities that increase our peace of mind, like going for a walk, watching the clouds float by, playing with our children, sitting in meditation, or chanting a Buddha's name. We also need to refrain from divisive speech. This is when, for example, we are speaking with one person. We tell him that someone else said something untrue about him. Then while talking to the other person, we say the first one criticized her. We have spoken divisively, and without realizing it, have sown the seeds for conflict. Instead of using words to deceive others, we can ask ourselves if what we are about to say is correct, honest, and beneficial to the other person. To accomplish this, we need to be aware of what we are saying. If we are mindful of our speech, we will not carelessly say something incorrect, untrue, or unbeneficial. If we are paying attention to what we are saying and to how the listener is reacting, we will be able to see if we upset or irritated the other person. We will then be able to stop before we make the situation worse. Instead of creating more conflict and pain in the world, we will be able to foster harmony and promote mutual cooperation as we develop the patience to learn when to speak wisely or to simply remain quiet. In all of our speech, we can stop ourselves from harming others by refraining from using speech that is self-serving, careless, or inappropriate. Usually, we speak without first thinking of what we are about to say or how it will affect others. We should try to remember to use the standard of what is correct, honest, and beneficial to judge what we are about to say. The Buddha told us that speech karma is our most commonly committed offense, and thus our speech karma causes more problems for us. While our thoughts do affect others, they are subtler, and thus their consequences are lighter. And while we may think of doing something, the opportunity to physically act on the thought may never present itself. So we have natural roadblocks in the creation of physical karma. But speech karma is so easy to commit. We simply open our mouths and all the unkind, thoughtless, angry words come tumbling out. Speaking is so easy, but so potentially harmful. Our physical and verbal behavior, the first and second components of the 10 virtuous conducts, can be good or bad depending on our thoughts, which is the third component. It is our thoughts, which usually arise from varying degrees of greed, anger, and ignorance, that are the precursors of our behavior. Greed, our craving for material things and pleasant experiences, and much more, comes from our preoccupation with self. What begins as self-preservation, our needs to meet basic requirements of shelter, food, and clothing, quickly expands to our desiring that which we do not need and more of what we already have. We equate the accumulation of things with happiness and success, and so fall into a cycle of wanting, obtaining, and more wanting. Anger, like all negative emotions, seems to happen so naturally and spontaneously. Initially, we do not even notice it. It feels so normal to us. The emotions of being angry, being irritated, displeased. It happens so quickly that we hardly notice the rising rage. But before every action we commit, and prior to every word we speak, there is a preceding thought. In our lack of mindfulness, we do not notice the thought of what we are about to say or do. If we can catch the thought as it arises, we will be able to refrain from acting out of anger. Ideally, by having a heart of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, we will stop the anger from even arising. Why is it so important to eliminate our anger? Might not the expression of our anger get it out of our system, so to speak? No, because voicing or expressing our anger does not eradicate it. On the contrary, it leads to even more anger. Our anger with a particular person goes back a long, long time, over uncountable lifetimes. Most of the time when we are speaking with another, we fail to be mindful of what we are saying. We may carelessly say something and hurt another's feelings without even realizing it. In so doing, we have contributed to planting another seed of anger in the consciousness of the other person. The recipient of the angry outburst may not think anything of it, at least not until we meet again. And that seed of anger matures. This next time, the other person will say something to us with just a slight trace of animosity. Again, this incident is registered in both our consciousnesses. This enmity is passed back and forth each time our paths meet. And each time it increases and grows more serious. At some point, it will turn into hatred. Eventually, that hatred will explode and one of us will lash out at the other physically. This is why voicing our anger to eliminate it does not work. It only allows the anger to grow. Anger is not to be acted upon, but faced, acknowledged, understood, and then released. When our anger and our self-centeredness are gradually reduced, we will get along better with others, and we will begin to find our heart of loving kindness, compassion, and joy. If you want to see the proof of this, look carefully into the face of someone who is always angry. Then, gaze upon a person who is always calm. Decide which one you would like to look like, which one you would like to be. As we improve in our practice of discipline, we will gradually lessen what the Buddha called the three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance, which we all have to some degree. If left unchecked, this greed and anger of ours will grow and spread, eventually consuming us. Not understanding what is happening, we allow this to happen because we are ignorant. This ignorance is not the lack of intelligence or a derogatory remark about someone's abilities. Ignorance is a lack of understanding of the underlying truths of what is happening to us and around us. It is not knowing, or perhaps not believing, in causality, or in the impermanent nature of everything that is conditioned. It is believing that we exist independently of everything around us, rather than realizing that everything is interdependent. It is thinking that happiness comes from outside of us, that it lies in other people, possessions, or ideas. It is the belief that it is okay to differentiate between those we like and dislike, that it is correct to look out for ourselves at the expense of others, and that it is reasonable to judge others based on personal opinions and not on the facts. When we think and act from ignorance, it becomes inevitable that we will make mistakes and not know how to fix what we have done. As we begin to replace our ignorance with understanding, we will find our greed and anger slowly dissolve. This is how we can get along better with others, become less absorbed, and develop the mind of joy. The third paramita is patience, which counters anger and hatred and helps us to avoid arguments and to achieve our goals. We need patience in almost everything we do. In school, we need patience to persevere in our studies. At work, patience helps us to properly accomplish our task. At home, patience is the foundation for interacting well with family members. Patience enables us to get along more harmoniously with those around us. It allows us to recognize our bad habits and to improve ourselves by changing those habits. Practicing patience gives us the courage and inner strength to act wisely in the face of adversity. It allows us to remain unruffled, to understand why things happen, and to stop blaming others for our problems. It is the ability to stay with a difficult and challenging undertaking without complaining, being disappointed, feeling resentful, or giving up prematurely. What is the biggest challenge to patience? Anger. When difficulties arise, we are usually surprised, and without thinking of what we are about to do, we often act out of anger. This goes against the essence of the Buddha's teachings, which is to not only avoid doing harm, but to provide help as well. In anger, we lash out at others, harming everyone and everything, ourselves included. Nothing is resolved. No one is helped. Instead, we create more causes for anger in our future, add to the suffering of others, and lose the opportunity to help another being. The harmful effects of impatience, anger, and intolerance can be understood even if you are not fully able to consider the suffering of others. When the fire of anger burns within, our face literally becomes red. Our features become contorted, and our enraged demeanor upsets others. We cannot sleep, find relief, or calm down. Friends and acquaintances avoid us. Even those who love us leave. We are alone. All because we gave in to anger. We have a choice here. We really do. We do not have to allow this to happen. Whether we are an awakened being, or more likely, simply someone who dreads the feeling of losing her temper again, we can make a commitment to ourselves, a commitment to the practice of patience. Obviously, this is extremely difficult to do at first. We will have to keep reminding ourselves how anger feels and what it looks like, and then contrast it with how tranquility feels and appears to others. First, we objectively consider a recent time we were angry, and then remember how we felt at that time. Next, we remember the feelings of contentment and tranquility that we experienced when we were enjoying time with our family or good friends, or perhaps enjoying an activity that we felt to be very relaxing. Finally, we choose to commit to the cultivation of patience. This is done consciously and ideally continuously. So often, our anger is automatic. Something happens, and in our mindless reaction, we are instantly angry. The only way to counter this is to remain in a continuous state of patience. Also, we can keep telling ourselves that everything is impermanent. This not only applies to enjoyable situations, but to those that are difficult as well. Painful, trying times will, at some point, end. This will happen much more quickly if we do not keep fueling the fire with our anger. Instead of becoming angry in all those infuriating situations, what can we do? We can remind ourselves that our actions do not need to be blindly automatic. We can choose how to respond. If it is too late and we have already lost our temper, we can still remind ourselves that we can alter the situation. Explaining away our erratic emotions by telling ourselves that we are right and are therefore justified in getting angry accomplishes nothing. Instead, calm down and talk to the other person. This way, we have a chance to resolve the problem. To be happy, we just need to let go of our unhappiness. What do we do when we are faced with a situation where calm logic and not retaliating with anger just seem to make the situation even worse? One way is to withdraw and try to find a better time to talk to the other person. Even when we manage to reach a more advanced state in our cultivation of patience, where we can remain calm in the face of someone else's anger, we are not helping them if we remain there fueling their anger and thus their suffering. There is enough misery in the world already. Withdraw and try to determine what we have done to contribute to the situation. Then find the right opportunity to talk calmly with the other person. To act out of anger is to act violently. But when does violence ever make a reasonable person happy? Never. Reasonable people only wish for happiness and goodness. Through giving and ethical behavior, we can create much joy. But it takes the cultivation of patience to safeguard this goodness and protect it from the fires of anger and violence. Practicing ethical behavior may result in our beginning to feel restricted by rules and requirements. If we approach our practice from an incorrect perspective, it might well seem rigid and forbidding. So to help us avoid this problem, the Buddha wisely taught diligence, the fourth of the 6 paramitas. Diligence, or enthusiastic effort, is the joy that we bring to our practice and to all that is worthwhile in our lives. It is the true delight that arises from deep within us when we are doing what is wholesome. It enables us to keep going when we feel tired or overwhelmed. It is refreshing and inspiring. The lights going dimmer is refreshing and inspiring, so we can appreciate our good fortune. Cultivating enthusiastic effort counteracts laziness and brings joy to our lives as we feel a sense of accomplishment, of finishing what we start. Laziness is often revealed as procrastination. We become involved in trivial activities and eventually end up in low spirits when the results disappoint. We know we have to do something, but somehow we keep postponing it, or we allow ourselves to become distracted. For example, it suddenly becomes vitally important to move the flowers on the dining room table. After completing this critical task, we go back to what we are supposed to be doing. In a few moments, we remember the bookshelf needs rearranging. Another crucial accomplishment. We again sit down but then decide we should call a friend and tell him all about the new employee at work. After several more such essential activities, the time that we had allocated to do our original task is gone. When we think of what we needed to do and what was actually done, our mood sinks. We do not feel any real sense of accomplishment in doing all these ad hoc tasks that we deemed to be critical. For what we actually wanted to do remains undone. As we think about it, the original task still looms before us and now seems insurmountable. We become upset with ourselves for procrastinating and feel despondent because the task still needs to be done. Lacking energy, we feel defeated and disappointed. At this point, we might turn on the television and begin flipping from one channel to another, or engage in some other pointless activity. These are all forms of laziness. So how do we counter laziness? Through a commitment to what we feel is important and enough enthusiastic effort to see it through to completion. Picture again the scenario on task avoidance. You are lying on the sofa and flipping channels. The telephone rings, and it is your supervisor. He asks if you can come to dinner in 30 minutes to discuss a promotion with a doubling of your salary and becoming head of your department. Still feel lazy? More than likely, you would be overwhelming with enthusiasm and elation as you rush to dress for dinner. What we tell ourselves about any given situation will determine our reaction to it. If we persuade ourselves that we have plenty of time to do something, that it is not that important, that it can wait till tomorrow or next week, then we are foolishly wasting time. The Buddha once asked a student how much time a person has left. The student answered, "A few more days." The Buddha prompted him to think again. The student pondered the question and then replied, "A few hours?" "Think again," encouraged the Buddha. "A breath?" "Excellent." All we can count on is this moment. We cannot afford to waste time. This realization is not meant to be depressing, but encouraging. When we waste time, we usually feel uncomfortable as we compare our plans to the reality of what we actually accomplished. Perhaps we had told someone what we wanted to do, and they were depending on us to do so. Our laziness and procrastination may result in a friend being disappointed, a spouse or child, made to wait while we try to do something at the last moment, or a coworker having to work harder because we missed a deadline. Previously, the question was raised of how we can find happiness and receive others' respect. We cannot attain them through laziness. Neither can we attain liberation from suffering by being lazy. We need enthusiastic effort, perseverance, and dedication in our practice and in everything we do. To develop enthusiastic effort, we must overcome laziness with right thoughts and understanding that will engender proper attitudes and a correct frame of mind. With our personal relationships, try to remember how we were feeling when we disappointed our spouse or children. Or think of how supremely important they are to us. Or more crucially, how important we are to them. With our work, we can focus on the seriousness of not being a dependable employer or employee. With our practice, we can come to the realization of the value of the opportunity to practice and understand the consequences of wasting yet another lifetime. These and similar techniques will gradually help us discover how to counter our negative habits. Having reduced or even overcome laziness, we may find that we still indulge ourselves in trivial activities. We still enjoy flipping between television channels, having long conversations with friends and coworkers about other friends and coworkers, and countless other nondescript activities. Such trivial activities by themselves are not intrinsically wrong. They harm us because they distract us from accomplishing goals that we have set for ourselves. To be more caring of those we love, to cultivate loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, to help others, to be more patient, and so much more. Enthusiastic effort brings joy to our lives as we feel a sense of fulfillment, of finishing what we started. Trivial activities can feel like worthwhile activities if we are not careful. They will distract us from finishing what we started and rob us of the joy that comes from such accomplishments. How do we determine whether an activity is worthwhile or trivial? We can ask ourselves, what is the intention or the motivation for what we are doing? If the motivation is to help others, to help them find lasting happiness, then our time spent in enthusiastically perfecting our skills will bring them immeasurable joy. And that activity is commendable. But if our intention is to solely benefit ourselves, then in spite of our hard work, we are not practicing enthusiastic effort, no matter how eager and enthusiastic we are. To bring happiness to others, we need to understand the causes of suffering and unhappiness. We ourselves need to be disciplined and patient. Once our hearts and minds know gentleness and peace, our verbal and physical behavior will change. Gradually, the peacefulness that is increasing within us will be reflected in what we do. The Buddha explained that every living being has the same true nature, the same ability to awaken and become enlightened. The Buddha was once like us, an ordinary person who underwent the sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death. But he learned how to liberate oneself from suffering. How did he do this? He sincerely developed the aspiration to leave suffering behind and to lay aside unwholesome thoughts. He was determined to live a life of not harming others, a life of helping others, a life of discipline, understanding, and patience. After he had attained supreme enlightenment, he explained that it took him innumerable lifetimes to reach the point where he was one night away from enlightenment. He arrived at that point through many practices of perfection. One of them was the practice of enthusiastic effort. How did he progress? One step at a time. Just as he did, we can too. The fifth paramita is meditative concentration. Our practice and training in discipline and not harming others will help us to lessen our harmful behavior and eventually end our verbal and physical negative behavior. Our minds will become calmer and less agitated. When our minds are thus settled, we will be better able to concentrate. Our concentration will initially reduce and then gradually eliminate our negative thoughts and emotional behavior. We will then gain meditative concentration, which will enable us to uncover our innate wisdom. Thus, discipline, meditative concentration, and wisdom work together and are complementary. Developing concentration counters our myriad wandering thoughts and helps us to focus. We become less easily distracted by others or circumstances. We begin our practice by calming the mind and focusing our attention on one thing for a certain length of time. In everyday activities, we can practice concentration in whatever we are doing. Most of us have experienced being totally absorbed in a task we enjoy doing. Before we began the activity, we might have felt tired, but as soon as we became engrossed in the activity, our weariness dissolved. Or we might have been hungry before we started, but that too passed unnoticed. At some point, someone or something interrupted us, and we were surprised to see that so much time had passed. This is concentration, a state of single-mindedness that has few distractions. There are no worrying thoughts and no thoughts of time or where we are. Due to our focused attention and the reduction of aimless, wandering thoughts, this is a state in which we may even feel more energetic than before we began. By becoming calm and focused, anyone can achieve this concentration and thus develop a serene and stable mind. We can use concentration in many activities, at work and at home, with family and friends. To help us attain a more spiritual state of concentration, there are many things we can focus on. A flower, the sound of a bird, our breath, the name of a Buddha, Amitabha. Each of these can help us find varying degrees of peace and happiness. Whatever type of meditation we practice, we will find that we will benefit much more if we practice to attain a specific goal, such as one befitting our Buddhist practice. Where is a good place to deepen our practice of concentration? Where we can live a simple but contented life without being distracted by frivolous activities or unnecessary sense stimuli, as these will just distract us and deplete our energy. We also need good friends who will support us and patiently help us discover our shortcomings. Friends who are committed to achieving the same goals we are. What are the personal criteria for such practice? A wholesome lifestyle that does not harm others. Enthusiasm and joy in what we undertake. Honesty in everything we do. And a sincere determination to seek liberation for ourselves and others. Our practice of meditative concentration will lead us to the last of the 6 paramitas, wisdom. Wisdom counters ignorance and enables us to know how best to help others and how to improve ourselves. This wisdom is not that which is gained through intense study and analysis of many diverse subjects. That would be seeking wisdom from external sources. The wisdom that I am speaking of is intuitive wisdom. The Buddha experienced this intuitive wisdom after he sat down on a cushion of grass, lightly closed his eyes, and entered a state of meditation. As he went deeper and deeper into that meditative state, he left study, analysis, and his previous practice of deprivation behind him. He went deep within himself and reached the state where he saw the reality of what was happening within him, around him, and throughout the universe. He finally experienced the true and complete reality, arising as it did from deep within him. By attaining a serene and stable mind, and no longer disturbed by emotions or pointless thoughts, he eliminated the poisons of the mind and discovered what he for uncountable lifetimes had been seeking: perfect wisdom. He reached it and entered it. This wisdom enabled him to realize that there is no independent self, and that everything is part of one entity. Causality of any event in one being's life has the potential to affect the causality of beings throughout the universe. Just as the movement of one drop of water in an immense ocean will result in the movement of every drop of water in that ocean. We are all one. When we look across the room and see that person whom we are so angry with and almost wish to strike, it is the same as being very angry with ourselves and wanting to hit ourselves. Does our left hand become angry with our right? Do they fight over who will open the door we wish to go through? Do they debate which one will pick up the cup? Does something belong to my left hand, but not to my right? We can see and understand the absurdity of such dualities, but our understanding stops there. We do argue with the person who is standing next to us. We do fight over who will be first. We do debate the use of and the ownership of possessions. We see duality between ourselves and everything else because we are far from understanding. We have not yet touched our true wisdom. lacking wisdom. We look at the reality, but we do not see it. It is as if we are viewing it through a tiny blurred window. We think that we see the whole truth. Another person looks through his tiny blurred window and is equally convinced that he has seen the whole truth. Although what we each see is different, and therefore results in different viewpoints, we are each convinced that we alone are right. We debate, argue, and fight. Convinced of our infallibility, we may even kill for our beliefs. If only we had just communicated better and shared what we had each seen through our respective windows, we might have understood a little more. But without functioning wisdom, we each view our tiny piece of reality and take it for the true state of reality. We think we perceive the whole truth through our 5 senses: our eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. As we see, hear, smell, taste, and touch our tiny piece of reality, we automatically conclude what we perceive to be the complete and true reality. As a result, all of our thoughts are based on blurred bits of reality, misperceptions of what we mistake for the complete truth. Our basically flawed conclusions lead us to discriminate, thereby developing a sense of ego or self. We think that I refers to ourselves, that you refers to another person, and that they refers to everyone else. We begin to judge others and find most of them wanting. Those we like or love, we praise as good. Others we dislike or hate, we condemn as bad. We do not truly care about the people and things that fall in between. We have expectations, and when they are not met, we suffer disappointments. But when they are met, we develop new expectations as the situation changes. We become emotionally attached and cling to things we like and those we love. We find disturbing and repellent those people and things we dislike or hate. We are never completely content. Going through life with all its ups and downs feels like an emotional roller coaster. Even when we find ourselves thinking that life is good, we sense that we might be at a peak and worry about plummeting down once again. We put others and ourselves through this emotional roller coaster because we have not yet uncovered our wisdom. Perhaps we were fortunate enough to have touched this insight for a brief moment when our minds were serene and stable, when our thoughts were on benefiting others, and when our enthusiasm and joy were strong within us. In that one instant, we had a glimmer of what was correct, honest, and beneficial. But in a flash, it was gone again. Everything we need is already within us. We have been talking about finding happiness and love. We have been searching with our senses, looking for happiness and love, for an end to suffering. We have been looking for them, listening for them, trying to savor or touch them, but that has not worked. Upon closer proximity, what we thought was happiness and love was just a temporary sense indulgence, not the real thing. They did not last. It was, as the Buddha said, a drop of dew, a flash of lightning. 1 minute, they are in our hands. The next, they are gone. Why? In our ignorance, in our lack of understanding of what is really happening, we look for happiness, goodness, and peace in the wrong places. They are not outside somewhere waiting for us to find them. They are inside of ourselves. They are in the heart of every being. They are the same in every being. Happiness, goodness, and peace are who we really are. They are our true nature, our Buddha nature. How do we find our true nature? Unconditional giving, moral training, deep felt patience, and enthusiastic effort will enable us to develop meditative concentration. With meditative concentration, we will touch our innate wisdom. If we begin to practice these 6 paramitas in even some small measure every day, starting with today, gradually we will begin to look in the right direction. And eventually we will awaken to the perfect goodness, perfect contentment, and perfect joy that are already within our true nature, within our Buddha nature. Amitabha. Please repeat the dedication of merit after me. Please stand. May the merit and virtues accrued from this work adorn the Buddha's pure land, repay the 4 kindnesses above, and relieve the sufferings of those in the 3 realms below. May all those who see or hear of this bring forth the heart of compassion and understanding. and at the end of this life, be born together in the land of ultimate bliss. Namo Amitabha. Respected Dharma Master, fellow practitioners and guests, Amitabha. In a land and time very distant from us, two men encountered one another. One was a Brahmin, a Hindu priest. The Brahmin realized that the man he was looking at was no ordinary being, and so he inquired, "Are you a god?" "No, Brahmin." "Are you an angel?" "No, Brahmin." "Are you a spirit?" "No, Brahmin." "What are you then?" "I am awake," replied the Buddha. By his own assertion, the Buddha was not a god. He was an ordinary man, living in a world engulfed in greed, anger, and ignorance. 2,500 years ago, when the Buddha was crisscrossing what is now India and Nepal, and teaching what he had awoken to, the world was similar in many ways to our world today. There were centers of great culture, and there were lands of stagnation. There were rulers with great power who thirsted for even more. And there were oppressed people who only wanted to live in peace. There were men who said that they alone held the key to spiritual secrets. And there were those who searched for different answers. There were people who had great wealth, and there were those who had nothing. There were people who said, "We must change," and there were those who refused to change. Perhaps that distant land and time are not that distant after all. Greed, anger, ignorance, and delusion are still very much with us today. In the world today, we hear so much about conflict. Economic conflict between the developed countries and third world countries. Cultural conflict between the East and the West. Sectarian conflict in the Middle East, ethnic conflict in Africa. So much pride and anger. So much arrogance, so much pain. When even government leaders cannot peacefully resolve the world's problems, what are we supposed to do? How can we, individuals without power or influence, hope to accomplish anything positive in the face of such fury and intolerance? In our technologically advanced world, is there anything we can learn from this man who rode away one night, leaving behind a life of sensory indulgence, privilege, and power, to spend the rest of his life walking barefoot across India and Nepal, sleeping under trees and begging for his food. Is there anything we can learn from this man who awakened to the truth 2,500 years ago? If we view Buddhism merely as a religion filled with rituals and go no further, no, we will not benefit. Viewing Buddhism in this way, we may put much energy into creating the perfect practice space, and we may run the risk of becoming engrossed in the accoutrements of practice, robes and meditation cushions, incense and musical instruments. Approaching Buddhism in this way, our time will be spent capturing the appearance of Buddhist practice rather than its essence. If we view Buddhism solely as a study of morality, concentration, and wisdom, then again, no, we will not benefit. If we merely study Buddhism, we will read many books and gain knowledge, but we will not experience and we will not savor the joy of the Dharma. The Dharma is the universal truth that the Buddha himself experienced and then related to us. If we only read about Buddhism, we will have misused our time by intellectualizing the teachings instead of practicing them. Just studying Buddhism or just studying any faith tradition or ethical teaching will do nothing to solve our problems. We need to act. But how? If we concurrently view Buddhism as a teaching of morality, concentration, and wisdom, and we practice it, yes, then and only then can Buddhism truly help us. Only when we experience what the Buddha was talking about will we begin to benefit ourselves and our world. Where do we start? Two fundamental precepts from the Buddha are that we should do no harm and we should purify our minds. He did not tell us to instruct others how to correct their faults. He did not say we should force others into thinking as we do, or belittle others to make ourselves look superior or wiser. He told us that if we wish to awaken, we would need to stop blaming others for our problems, to stop arguing with others, and to stop judging others. Instead, we need to look at ourselves and assume full responsibility for what happens to us. We reap what we sow. Our lives today are the result of what we thought, said, and did in the past. What we think, say, and do today will likewise shape our future. If we harm others, we will be harmed. If we love others, we will be loved. If we have peaceful thoughts, we will have peace. Thus, everything we do matters. This non-sectarian, natural law of causality, the reality that everything will come back to us full circle, is perfectly fair. And the workings of the law of karma are inescapable. The Buddha told us not to harm others. How do we accomplish this? Morality, which is to do to others as you would have them do to you. The Buddha expressed the same idea when he said, "Do not hurt others with that which hurts yourself." Mohammed said, "None of you is a believer until you love for your neighbor what you love for yourself." Hillel said, "What is hateful to you, do not do to others." Confucius said, "What you do not wish for yourself, do not do to others." If you would not like someone to lie to you, do not lie to others. If you would be unhappy if someone took something from you, then do not take anything without the owner's permission. If you would be upset if someone spoke harshly to you, then do not speak harshly to others. The reality is that there is little we can do to quickly and easily bring about change on a global scale. But there is a great deal that each of us can do and must do to change ourselves. The only way to achieve world peace is to create peace within each of us. If there are fires to the north, south, east, and west of us, do not expect not to get burned. A person surrounded by fire will suffer. If we want a harmonious society, we must create harmony in our family, in our workplace, and in our communities. Instead of being consumed by the fire of our craving and anger, we need to create peace. When we listen to such words, we are moved, and we nod our heads in agreement. Treating others as we want to be treated sounds wonderful. These truthful words fall like raindrops on hearts that are thirsting for the truth, for gentleness and serenity. They fill us with joy. But the minute we stop focusing on the words, we forget. So quickly, the awareness and joy fade as we are pulled back into everyday life. Perhaps it will happen even as we drive home tonight. How easy it will be to slip back into selfishness and forget to treat the other person on the road as we wish to be treated. How readily will we make a thoughtless remark about someone and inadvertently pollute our mind and the minds of those with us. forgetting that we do not want others injecting their harsh words into our peaceful thoughts. We will carelessly intrude on the peaceful thoughts of others. To practice not harming others, we need concentration, the ability to focus on our chosen task. In not harming others, and thus not harming ourselves, we need to focus on what we are thinking and on what we are about to do. We rarely do either mindfully. There are far too many distractions around us. There is so much we want to learn, so many toys we want to possess, so many experiences we want to have. We want, we want, we want. Our desires pull us first in one direction and then almost immediately in another. What we wanted so urgently last year, we want to replace this year. We are pulled by our cravings, so we remain prisoners of our own attachments and aversions. Little wonder we cannot concentrate, but learn to concentrate we must. Unless we learn to be masters of our minds, we will continue to be slaves of our emotions. Do not harm any living being. The Buddha showed us how. Once we begin to rein ourselves in by living morally, we will commit fewer wrongdoings. In this way, we will be less plagued by guilt. We will react less from emotions and more from reason. Harming others will result in our worrying less. This will enable us to focus our minds on what we choose. As we progressively become calmer, our concentration will enable us to touch our innate wisdom. This is the wisdom that the Buddha experienced and then spoke of. It already lies deep within us. But we have yet to enter, much less function from, this clear, intuitive wisdom. As caring members of society, it is our responsibility to practice the virtues of harmlessness, compassion, and equanimity. These virtues lie deep within us, within our true nature. This true nature is the same as that of all Buddhas. The true nature of Buddhas, their very essence, is loving kindness, altruism, and tranquility. These qualities lie at the core of their being and ours. Although such virtues are already within each of us, all too often they lie dormant. Why? Because we are thoroughly engrossed in foolish attempts to satisfy our personal desires. We are convinced that our way of doing things is correct, and that our happiness lies in possessions and power. And so we are intent on getting others to do things our way and on accumulating wealth and influence. Although we have the same true nature as the Buddhas, we fail to experience the wonders of this true nature. We consistently fall back into our bad habits. Thus we end up acting from our human nature, all the while burying our true nature deeper within us. The Buddha knew the problems of humanity. He had experienced them. But he overcame these problems. He awoke through the practice of morality, concentration, and wisdom. He experienced the truth of the cosmos. He found the path to awakening and then left clear guidelines for us to follow after him. But that was all he could do. Leave guidelines. As compassionate as Buddhas are, they are unable to go against the natural laws of the universe. They know the truth. And they know that the natural laws that govern the universe cannot be changed. Not even by a Buddha. So as much as they want to help us, Buddhas cannot undo what we have already set into motion. I created my life. Only I can change it. You created your life. Only you can change it. Others created their own lives. Only they can change those lives. Our lives today are the direct result of what we thought, what we said, and what we did in our yesterdays. Our lives today are the direct result. And as we have learned, our todays, just like our yesterdays, are lived in this self-same world, a world engulfed in greed and anger, enveloped in ignorance and delusion. Greed is our endless craving, and anger is what arises when our greed is unfulfilled. Ignorance is our lack of understanding of the underlying truths of what is happening to us and around us. Delusion is mistaking wrong ideas for the truth. Due to our ignorance and delusion, we believe in ideas that are wrong and reject those that are correct and beneficial. We do so not because we are bad people. Lazy, yes. Easily distracted, yes. Impatient and judgmental, yes. But because we are bad people, no. Lacking the ability to clearly discern right from wrong, we act foolishly. In most instances, our intentions are not to harm others. We are just so easily caught up in our desires, our wants, wishes, expectations. When these are unfulfilled in our impatience and disappointment, we give in to anger, which arises from within us, uninvited and unnoticed. So easily, so automatically. We feel resentment, irritation, if not outright rage. In the grip of these negative emotions, we react to other people, to other situations, not out of the wish to help others, but from the compelling urge to protect ourselves. Anger arises when we are selfish, when we are only thinking of what we want but failed to obtain. The other person does not go along with our ideas. We do not receive their agreement and praise for our cleverness. The article we want eludes us. We do not possess the object we are convinced would make us happy. The person we desire rejects us. We are alone and afraid. All these fears lie at the core of our anger. We convince ourselves that the ideas, the possessions, the person will make us happy. We want it to happen. We expect it to happen. But our expectations fail to materialize. Happiness, once again, eludes us. Instead of looking at ourselves to see if perhaps we were the cause, we blame others for arguing with us, for not giving us what we deserve to have, for not loving us as we hope. And so our fear of not being admired by others, our fear of not having what we believe all others have, our fear of being lonely and alone arises. We strike back defensively at those around us. We strike at those we perceive as having robbed us of what we wanted, what we felt we deserved to obtain, and what we believe others already have. We are afraid. In our fear, we feel vulnerable. In our insecurity and anxiety, our fear gives rise to anger. We may hold our bitterness, resentment, or pain inside, or we may react by striking out at the other person. Either way, we give in to our anger once again. In the same way, our family members give in to anger. Friends and co-workers give in to anger. Those with power and the means to inflict great harm give in to anger. And our world is engulfed in greed and disappointment, in ignorance and delusion, in anger and retaliation. not just individuals, but groups of people bound together by ethnicity, religion, or politics react in the same way. Greed, fear, anger, retaliation. What is the answer? How do we resolve conflict and attain peace? Wishful thinking will not end the hatred and intolerance in the world. Merely reading books will not solve our problems. Relying on others certainly does not work. The only way to create peace is through hard work and dedication, and by understanding how much is at stake here. We, each one of us, must be dedicated, and we must do the hard work. But we need not discover how to do the work. The Buddhas have already taught us everything we need to know and shown us the path we need to follow. We can take comfort in the knowledge that although Buddhas cannot get us out of the chaos we have created, they will help us as long as we need them to. This they do by continuing to teach us and by showing us the way. We just need to listen and follow their advice. The sutras contain many accounts that show us how to follow the Buddha's guidance. One account tells of a time when the Buddha was staying in Sravasti. An incident was brought to his attention. Close to where he was currently visiting resided a number of monks and nuns. It happened that when some nuns were spoken ill of, one of the monks would become angry. When that monk was spoken ill of, the nuns would become angry. After confirming with the monk that this was accurate, the Buddha advised the monk that he should discipline himself and hold these thoughts. My mind will not change. I will not utter evil words. I will abide with compassion and loving kindness without an angry thought. The Buddha then told the monastics to always remember that even ordinarily calm minds can be disturbed in difficult times. So the monastics needed to train themselves to remain calm, regardless of the situation. The Buddha recounted how there was once a woman who lived in the same city where they currently were. Everyone regarded the woman as gentle and kind. She had a slave named Kali, who was clever and hard-working. Kali wondered whether her mistress was as mild-tempered as she seemed. Might her mistress actually be hiding a bad temper? Perhaps Kali was so efficient that her mistress had not had cause to lose her temper. Kali decided to test her mistress by getting up later than usual one morning. When the mistress saw Kali and asked her why she got up so late. Callie responded that she had no reason. The mistress became angry. The next morning, Callie got up even later. Once more,